They thought one woman in a town full of killers would break, until Mae Harrow played every man like a card game and started building her own empire from the ashes they left behind. Dust devils danced across the parched earth as the stagecoach rattled into Redemption, a town that lived up to its name only in bitter irony. Mae Harrow, her hands bound but her eyes blazing, took it all in. The rough-hewn buildings, the leering faces of men who looked like sin incarnate, the oppressive heat that seemed to suck the very life out of the place. Redemption. A dumping ground for the dregs of society, a place where the law turned a blind eye and men settled their scores with bullets and blades. And me, a woman with a past as checkered as a saloon floor, was now its newest resident. She was a thief, yes, but a thief with a purpose. Framed for a crime she didn't commit, she'd been sentenced to this experiment. A town built on the promise of rehabilitation but reeking of despair. They thought they could break her, throw her to the wolves and watch her crumble. They were wrong. Mae Harrow wasn't built to be broken. She was built to rule, the only woman in a town full of wolves. It wasn't a disadvantage, it was a weapon. Redemption wasn't just a town, it was a cage built of sun-baked brick and broken dreams. The saloon doors swung open and shut like the jaws of some monstrous beast, swallowing men whole and spitting them out hollow-eyed and desperate. Dust coated everything, the buildings, the people, even the air itself. It was a place where hope went to die, and second chances were sold for the price of a bullet. The main street was a gauntlet of vice and violence. Gambling dens spilled their noise and smoke into the already thick air, and the scent of cheap whiskey mingled with the tang of gunpowder. Every shadow held a threat, every smile a hidden agenda. Redemption was a pressure cooker, simmering with resentment and ready to explode at the slightest provocation. The townsfolk were a motley crew of desperados, outlaws, and men running from their pasts. Each carried a story etched on their face, tales of betrayal, loss, and the endless pursuit of something just out of reach. They were wolves, each vying for dominance in a brutal hierarchy, and me was about to step right into their den. The men of Redemption watched me's arrival with a mixture of amusement and contempt. Silas, a hulking brute with a scar that bisected his face, spat a stream of tobacco juice onto the dusty ground. "Look what the cat dragged in," he drawled, his voice thick with disdain. "A little bird for the vultures." Others chuckled, their eyes raking over me with a predatory glint. They saw her as nothing more than a plaything, a diversion in their monotonous existence. A fragile thing to be broken and discarded. They whispered bets on how long she'd last, predicting her swift descent into despair and submission. The sheriff, a corrupt and jaded man named Barlow, simply smirked. He'd seen countless souls enter Redemption, each one brimming with hope, only to be crushed by the town's unforgiving reality. He fully expected me to follow the same path, a broken woman begging for mercy. He figured a week, maybe two, before she was begging him for protection. They all did eventually. They never learned. They underestimated her, terribly. While the men of Redemption snickered and sneered, me was busy cataloging. She didn't flinch at their crude remarks or cower under their leering gazes. Instead, her eyes, sharp and calculating, moved like a hawk surveying its territory. She watched the subtle shifts in power, the unspoken alliances, the simmering rivalries that ran beneath the surface of the town's brutal facade. She noted the way Silas, despite his size, deferred to a wiry man named Finch, likely the brains behind Silas's brawn. She observed the tension between Barlow and the owner of the saloon, a woman with eyes as cold as a winter storm and a reputation that preceded her. She saw the desperation in the eyes of the younger men, the ones eager to prove themselves, the ones ripe for manipulation. Redemption was a chessboard, and each of these men was a piece. They saw her as a pawn, easily sacrificed, but me knew better. She wasn't a pawn, she was the player, and she was about to make her first move. Me's initial move was subtle, almost imperceptible. It began with a whisper, a carefully placed rumor that exploited the existing tension between Sheriff Barlow and Sadie, the saloon owner. The rumor suggested that Barlow was skimming profits from Sadie's gambling operation, a claim designed to sow seeds of distrust. She didn't spread the rumor herself, of course. Instead, she confided in a young, impressionable barmaid, knowing the information would quickly spread like wildfire through the town. It was a gamble, but a calculated one. Me understood that information was currency in Redemption, and a well-placed lie could be more powerful than a loaded gun. The following day, the atmosphere in the saloon was thick with suspicion. Barlow and Sadie exchanged veiled threats, their usual camaraderie replaced with a palpable hostility. Me watched from the shadows, a ghost in the machine, her lips curved into a faint, knowing smile. The game had begun, and she was already winning. With Barlow and Sadie distracted by their feud, Me turned her attention to Silas and Finch. She'd observed that Silas, despite his intimidating presence, was deeply insecure, constantly seeking Finch's approval. Finch, on the other hand, craved power but lacked the muscle to seize it directly. It was a perfect imbalance to exploit. Me approached a few of Silas's men, younger recruits who felt overlooked and underappreciated. She spoke to them of Silas's reliance on Finch, suggesting that Finch was using Silas for his own gain, hoarding the best opportunities and rewards. She painted a picture of Silas as a puppet danced by Finch's strings. The seeds of discontent took root quickly. The younger men began to question Finch's authority, their loyalty to Silas wavering. Me offered them an alternative, a chance to prove themselves, to earn real respect, to become more than just Silas's muscle. All they had to do was trust her and listen. It wasn't easy to gain the trust of hardened criminals. Me understood that. She didn't offer empty promises or false platitudes. Instead, she offered them something tangible, opportunity. She knew where valuable goods were being transported through the desert, information Silas and Finch had been keeping to themselves. She shared this information with her new recruits, giving them a chance to prove their worth and earn a share of the spoils. One of the recruits, a young man named Jesse, was particularly skeptical. "Why are you doing this?" he asked, his eyes narrowed with suspicion. "What's in it for you?" Me met his gaze, her expression unwavering. "I'm offering you a chance to rise above this," she said, gesturing to the squalor of redemption. "A chance to be more than just thugs, and in return I expect loyalty and obedience." Jesse and the others exchanged glances. They were wary, but the lure of opportunity was too strong to resist. They agreed to follow Me's lead, forging an unlikely alliance built on mutual need and a shared desire for something more. The desert became Me's training ground. Under the scorching sun, she pushed her recruits beyond their limits. These weren't soldiers, they were thugs, accustomed to brawling and intimidation. Me taught them discipline, strategy, and the importance of teamwork. She drilled them in marksmanship, close-quarters combat, and the art of silent movement. "You're not just swinging fists anymore," she'd bark, her voice cutting through the desert heat. "You're thinking, you're planning, you're anticipating." She taught them how to use the terrain to their advantage, how to conserve ammunition, and how to fight as a unit. Slowly, the thugs began to transform. They stood taller, their movements more purposeful, their eyes filled with a newfound confidence. They were becoming something more than just hired guns. They were becoming a force to be reckoned with, bound by loyalty to me and a shared vision of a better future. Me instilled in them what they were missing, giving them the respect they yearned for. And she gave it freely in every training session. The opportunity came in the form of a stagecoach carrying a shipment of gold that was supposed to be split between Barlow, Sadie, and Silas. Me and her crew intercepted the stagecoach, not with brute force, but with surgical precision. They disabled the guards, secured the gold, and vanished into the desert before anyone knew what hit them. When the news reached Redemption, the town was in an uproar. Barlow, Sadie, and Silas were furious, their carefully constructed alliance shattered. They immediately suspected each other, further fueling the existing tensions. Then a message arrived, a single gold coin delivered to each of the three leaders along with a note. "A new sheriff is in town." It was a bold declaration, a clear challenge to the existing order. Me had announced her presence not as a victim, but as a contender, and Redemption would never be the same. The fear, as she planned, was palpable. And fear was a powerful tool. The brazen theft of the gold and Me's audacious message sent shockwaves through Redemption. Fear mixed with resentment and a grudging respect rippled through the town. Barlow, Sadie, and Silas, their authority openly challenged, were desperate to reassert their dominance. They each began consolidating their forces, preparing for a showdown. Barlow, fueled by rage and a bruised ego, doubled the town guard and imposed a strict curfew. Sadie, her saloon now a fortress, tightened her grip on the gambling operations, squeezing every last dollar from her patrons to fund her private army. Silas, paranoid and suspicious, lashed out at anyone he perceived as disloyal, his reign of terror becoming increasingly erratic. The townsfolk, caught in the crossfire, lived in a state of constant anxiety. The whispers grew louder, the shadows darker. Redemption was on the brink of all-out war, and Mae Harrow was the spark that lit the fuse. The leaders all agreed. Mae needed to be taken care of, permanently. But none of them were willing to trust each other enough to work together to do it. Jesse, Mae's most loyal and capable lieutenant, approached her with a proposition. He discovered a weakness in Sadie's defenses, a secret passage that could allow them to take control of the saloon with minimal bloodshed. However, seizing the saloon would mean betraying a promise Mae had made to the barmaid, the one who had initially spread the rumor about Barlow. Mae had promised her protection, a new life away from redemption. Taking the saloon meant the barmaid would be caught in the crossfire, her safety jeopardized. Mae had to choose, prioritize her ambition and seize a strategic advantage, or honor her word and protect an innocent life. It was a decision that weighed heavily on her, testing the very core of her character. Was she willing to sacrifice her own humanity in her quest for power? The decision had to be made, and fast. The war for redemption was coming, and she had to be ready, but at what cost? Mae, after much deliberation, decided to honor her promise to the barmaid. She arranged for her safe passage out of redemption, sacrificing the opportunity to seize the saloon. However, her decision had unforeseen consequences. Jesse, disillusioned by what he perceived as weakness, believed Mae was losing her edge. He saw her compassion as a liability, a weakness that would ultimately lead to their downfall. Driven by ambition and a desire for power, Jesse betrayed Mae. He secretly informed Silas of Mae's plans, hoping to gain favor and seize control of her operation. Silas, eager to eliminate Mae, ambushed her and her remaining loyal followers, catching them off guard. The attack was swift and brutal. Mae's forces were scattered, her carefully laid plans in ruins. She was forced to flee, wounded and defeated, her dream of ruling redemption seemingly shattered. The betrayal cut deep, not just because of the strategic setback, but because it came from someone she trusted. She wondered if she could ever trust anyone again. Hiding in the harsh desert landscape, tending to her wounds, Mae could have succumbed to despair. Jesse's betrayal had stung, but it also clarified things. Compassion wasn't a weakness, it was a choice, and she would choose it again. But she would also be smarter, more ruthless. She began to rebuild, starting with the few loyal followers who had managed to escape Silas's ambush. She sought out those who had been wronged by Silas, Barlow, and Sadie, those who yearned for a better life in redemption. Slowly, painstakingly, she gathered a new force, one forged in the fires of betrayal and driven by a shared thirst for justice. This time, she wouldn't rely on brute force or empty promises. She would use her wit, her cunning, and her understanding of redemption's power dynamics to turn the tables on her enemies. She would make them pay for underestimating her, for betraying her, for thinking they could break her. Mae Harrow was far from broken, she was just getting started. Her first act was getting a message to Jesse. The message Mae sent to Jesse was simple, a map of redemption with Silas's headquarters circled in red. The message also included a warning. Silas was planning to consolidate his power by eliminating Barlow and Sadie, seizing control of the entire town. Mae knew Jesse, despite his betrayal, still harbored a flicker of loyalty, a belief in her vision for redemption. She gambled that he would see Silas's ambition as a threat to his own power, a reason to switch sides once more. And she was right. Jesse, realizing he was just a pawn in Silas's game, contacted Barlow and Sadie, revealing Silas's plan. The three factions, once bitter rivals, formed a temporary alliance, united by a common enemy, Silas. The final showdown took place in the heart of redemption. Mae, leading her newly formed force, confronted Silas and his men in a brutal, all-out battle. Barlow and Sadie, honoring their agreement, attacked from different angles, creating a chaotic three-way conflict. Redemption would be decided this day. In blood, the battle raged, a chaotic ballet of gunfire and desperation. Barlow and Sadie, consumed by their own ambitions, fought each other as much as they fought Silas. Mae, however, remained focused, her strategic mind calculating every move. She used the chaos to her advantage, positioning her forces to exploit the weaknesses in each faction. Silas, a hulking brute, fell first, betrayed by Jesse and overwhelmed by Mae's forces. Barlow, wounded and weakened, was quickly subdued. Sadie, realizing she was outmatched, attempted to flee, but Mae cut her off. "It's over, Sadie," Mae said, her voice cold and unwavering. "Redemption belongs to me now." Sadie, defeated and desperate, lunged at Mae with a hidden knife. But Mae was ready. With a swift, decisive move, she disarmed Sadie and left her at the mercy of her followers. The battle was won. Mae, through her strategic brilliance and the unwavering loyalty of her followers, had seized control of redemption. Jessie knelt before her. Mae didn't rule through fear or intimidation. She ruled through respect and clever management. She understood that redemption, for all its lawlessness, craved stability. She implemented a fair system of justice, resolving disputes with wisdom and impartiality. She established trade routes, bringing prosperity to the town. She even hired a schoolteacher, offering the children of redemption a chance at a better future. She appointed Jesse as her second-in-command, not out of forgiveness, but out of understanding. He was ambitious, yes, but also fiercely loyal and capable. She knew he would serve her well. Some grumbled, of course. There were those who longed for the old days of chaos and violence, but they were quickly silenced, not by brute force, but by the overwhelming support of the townspeople. Mae had earned their respect, their loyalty, their trust. She had transformed redemption from a den of wolves into a thriving community, a testament to her leadership and vision. Redemption was finally living up to its name, but there was more to do. Mae planned to stay on top. Mae's form of justice was unique, a blend of pragmatism and compassion. She didn't believe in lengthy trials or harsh punishments. Instead, she focused on restitution and rehabilitation. Thieves were forced to return what they had stolen, and wrongdoers were given opportunities to atone for their actions. She outlawed gambling, recognizing its destructive influence on the town. She encouraged honest labor, providing opportunities for those who were willing to work. She established a system of checks and balances, ensuring that no single person could amass too much power. The old ways of redemption were fading, replaced by a new order built on fairness and opportunity. The town, once a haven for criminals and outcasts, was becoming a beacon of hope in the desolate West, but not everyone was happy. Barlow and Sadie, imprisoned but not forgotten, plotted their revenge. And whispers of a new threat, a powerful railroad baron with his eyes on redemption, began to circulate. Mae knew her reign was far from secure. There would be new challenges to face, new battles to fight, but she was ready. She was Mae Harrow, and redemption was hers. Standing on the balcony of the newly renovated saloon, overlooking the bustling streets of redemption, Mae contemplated the nature of power. It wasn't about brute force or intimidation. It was about influence, about understanding people's desires and fears, about providing them with something they craved, hope. She had learned that power was a responsibility, a burden as much as a privilege. It required constant vigilance, a willingness to make difficult choices, and the ability to adapt to changing circumstances. Ruling redemption wasn't about imposing her will. It was about guiding the town towards a better future, a future where everyone had a chance to thrive. But she also knew that power was fleeting, that it could be taken away as easily as it was gained. She had to remain vigilant, to anticipate threats, to be ready to defend what she had built. The West was a harsh and unforgiving place, and redemption was a prize worth fighting for. She wondered if she was a good ruler. And could she keep it up? Only time would tell. She could only do her best, and trust those who were loyal to her. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. Mae stood tall, silhouetted against the fiery landscape, the wind whipping through her hair. She had faced betrayal, defeat, and countless obstacles, but she had never wavered, never surrendered. Redemption was meant to break her, to tame her, but it had only unleashed her true potential. She wasn't just a thief, she was a leader, a strategist, a force to be reckoned with. She was a woman who had carved her own destiny in a world dominated by men. The West had tried to tame her, to mold her into something she wasn't. But Mae Harrow was unyielding, unbreakable. She was born to rule, to shape the world in her own image, and redemption was just the beginning. The legend of Mae Harrow had begun, a legend whispered in saloons and around campfires, a legend that would echo through the ages. Mae Harrow never needed saving. She only needed room to rise, and rise she did. The railroad baron would soon learn that. Redemption had a new protector, and her name was Mae Harrow.